Women, sometimes become elated when their husbands are gone, meaning that they jump for joy when their husband has passed on. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. And I want to respond to this commenter. She says, my great grandmother had 14 children. My grandmother had three. She was happy the day that her husband died. She didn't even know that she was pregnant with the third. And I feel like, again, when we talk about our our grandmothers and great grandmothers and all of the ancestral women in our past, again, a lot of those women did not have autonomy over themselves, much less their own bodies. And I think, back in the day, women would get married as children again, so they would, a lot of their husbands were grown men already. And so a lot of them were getting married as children, 11, 12, 13 years old. And, that was legal back then. And the first thing, these women had to deal with was being jumped on in a sexual way. Um, and, I think when you think about women who are getting pregnant back in the day, I think that serves a number of functions, right? I think the first function it serves is to, okay, of course, we're going to procreate, we're going to carry on the bloodline. But I think, pregnancy also, too, settles a woman down. That makes that woman undesirable, to other men, or lets other men know that she's taken it. Number three, it also saddles her down in the way that, she has to take care of the house, and so she can't be ambitious and do the things that she wants to do if she wanted to go to college or things like that, which, again, that wasn't something that was always, that was allowed for many years. So she can't be ambitious. She has to be there to wait on me hand and foot. So she's, James from Good Times said, kitchen and bedroom, Florida, kitchen and bedroom. What that means is, sex, taking care of the house and the kids. That's all I want you to do. Don't go getting ambitious. Don't go trying to do other things. I don't want you to do that. That line of thinking is still very common today. And I think it's a lot of the thinking that, you probably hear a lot of these dating coaches tout, which is like, oh, women can't do better than their man and this and that, and the other, or men look down on women, or men feel threatened by, his ego's got to be coddled. So you'll hear that. That's very much that old school, line of thinking where the woman must submit and be at her man's beck and call and cannot outshine her man. The other thing is, if you're saddled down with kids, I get to do me. As a man, I get to do me. So you're at home taking care of babies, therefore you're preoccupied. So I think, what is that, number 4 or 5? You're preoccupied, so I get to do me. So a lot of these women who had 14 children, like your great grandmother did, was busy and overwhelmed with all of those children. I mean, she's basically bringing up a team of kids, and while he gets to go out and live a life that's free, he gets to work, he gets to hang out with friends. And a lot of these men also had multiple affairs. So they had, outside children as well. But I also think number 5 or number 6, coming back to, all these kids, I think there's some implications in having the kids. What we may have been seeing when women were having all these children is dealing with, possibly A, dealing with abuse, but B, also possibly dealing with what we now know is sex addiction, meaning that their husbands had sex addiction. And, a sex addiction, I'm just going to do it how I want to do it. And, you're just basically there to give me my gratification. I'm not going to think about the repercussions of you getting pregnant. I don't care if you get pregnant. I'm not worried about that. I have this addiction. I have this urge. You're going to be here for me when I need it. And that's, you know, even if they were going outside the home and getting all of these other women pregnant, which a lot of people were, I think that is what we now call sex addiction, possibly even, breeding fetishes and things like that, which I talked about here on another video that I posted today. But I've also done other videos on that previously. And I think children were the consequences of sex addiction because, women couldn't go out and take care of it like they can. Well, actually, we're kind of going back to that time frame, but there was a period of time when women could go out and get an abortion and take care of it. Birth control is now readily available for most people, so there is that. But I think also too, so there's been some advancements in medicine. There's been some advancements, dare I say, in legal rights that women have over their own bodies and taking care of their own bodies, even when they're coerced into doing something. There's also now birth control for men as well, although that's not widely talked about. Men can also go and get a vasectomy if they wanted to do that. But, again, still the onus of pregnancy is by and large still put on women today. A lot of women's husbands were abusive. And, I remember even with my own grandmother, she was very relieved when my grandfather died. And she had, children in the double digits too. And so it was a very huge relief, and when I was there, she talked to me very candidly about it. Like, "Good God, I'm glad he's gone." And so a lot of women, that's the only way that they can get out of their marriage is if somebody, if one of them dies, they couldn't walk away and get divorced. And they definitely couldn't tell their husbands no. They couldn't stop their husbands from cheating. They couldn't leave their husbands when they cheated. So this is the sad reality that a lot of women had to face back then. Not to mention, a lot of women were child brides. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot more manipulation and coercion, possessiveness, dangers and threats when women are child brides as well. There's also this phenomenon that's really popular in Japan and Asian countries. In Asian countries, particularly in Japan, I remember learning about this, and I forget what it's called, but their husbands go away to work. And so a lot of women are sort of left to live their life freely until their husbands retire. And then when their husbands retire, their husbands are at home with them. And it's almost like a pandemic where these women become depressed because now their husbands are home with them and they're like, shit, can he just go away? And women become very depressed. They become almost suicidal. And I forget the name of this phenomenon. It's been many years since I've talked about it. I've learned about it and talked about it. But it was a phenomenon that was very popular in Japan. And I probably should have looked before I talked about it. But if somebody knows what I'm talking about, if you can put it down in the comments. Otherwise, I may just revisit it later with another post. But thanks so much for putting this down there. I think it says a lot when death is the only way that women can get relief. And side note, there were a lot of people, back in the day that shot their spouses as well. So I think, this phenomenon is a lot more common than we care to think about. Thanks so much.